Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I just filmed a huge Oxford related Q&A, and one question that I get asked a lot is how did I get into Oxford? So I just thought I would make this into a separate video. How I got into Oxford is a bit of a misleading question because I assume you want to know how you can get into Oxford, and for that I don't have a specific answer, to be honest. There's no formula that you can undergo or take for you to get into Oxford, and if there was, I would be very rich if I knew the answer to that. In short, you have to be very passionate, genuinely about your course, because it will definitely come through in your application and it will motivate you to actually finish the course and continue studying it. Maybe research something niche related to your subject and talk about that in your personal statement and then in your interviews. I think that will benefit you a lot. If there is relevant work experience you can do, then try and do that, but for most courses there isn't, unless it's like medicine. Be open to learning new things because your tutors aren't interested in someone who thinks they know everything already. If that was the case, I don't know why you'd be studying at uni, so they're thinking the same thing. And besides that, yeah, I don't really know how to answer how you can get into Oxford. How I got into Oxford, though, is a different story. I'm from the UK, so I applied through the UCAS system. If you're an international student, I also get asked that a lot. How do you apply to Oxford? Truthfully, I'm not too sure, so please do look at the Oxford website and ask questions directly via email if you need help for specific things like funding and scholarships and stuff. But I applied through UCAS. There was an option to apply for, I think, 2 universities or 5, but they both cost £25, so obviously I went for the 5. And I'm from London, East London, and I remember at the time I applied for 5, but I knew that only 1 or 2 of them was really going to be the options. The other ones were just for me to see if I could get in or not, because my strict family was not going to let me move out. Yeah, being the Muslim woman, the only child of my household, my brown household, moving out was not an option for me. But then I went to Oxford, so we'll talk about that in a second. So I applied to SOAS, doing Chinese studies. That's quite an obvious choice, and it's in London, so I wouldn't have to move out. I applied to Oxford, as you know, and alhamdulillah, eventually I did get in. I applied to Sheffield, I think, Nottingham, and I can't even remember. I think I applied to Goldsmiths and some other place. A good university, I just can't remember the name of it. Begins with an L, I think. But yeah, I got a really good scholarship for Nottingham, but I couldn't take it because obviously that would mean moving out. And I would have to make it my conditional offer, so my first offer if I wanted to accept the scholarship. But I didn't want to because I wanted to go to Oxford. My second choice was SOAS, my first choice was Oxford. And I made a deal with my mum basically that if I get into Oxford, I'll move out. And if I don't, then I'll go to SOAS and I'll live at home. It's not that I wanted to move out. I wasn't going to uni to move out, but I just knew that there was more opportunities for my course in universities outside of London. Like in London, the only really good university for Chinese, for the course that I wanted to do, was at SOAS. And even then, it wasn't really straight Chinese studies, because at the time, I'm not sure about now, at the time you had to do Chinese with business or Chinese with linguistics or Chinese with something else, basically. There was never straight Chinese studies. And some of the places that did offer that were not in London, so that's why I had to branch out. And especially to fill 5 spaces, I could only fill 3 in London, so yeah. I applied to other places, but with no intention of actually going there. I just wanted to see if I could get in just for myself, basically. And I did. I got into all of them. But they all told me very slowly, so I was kind of nervous. SOAS, though, I went for the open day, and personally, I didn't really like the feel. It felt very disorganised, and I felt quite disconnected to the campus. But, spoiler alert, I think every place is disorganised. Oxford is also horrendously disorganised, and I think every place just is. It's a hit and miss, and maybe depends on the department. I applied to Oxford, not really thinking I'd get in. It wasn't a dream of mine since I was a kid. I just thought, if I'm applying to 5 places, why not fill one of them as Oxford? It makes sense. I could get in. I could not. And if I don't get in, I'm not going to cry about it. If I do get in, that would be amazing. So I went to a 6th form called the London Academy of Excellence. It's a very pretentious name, but it was made to get people into Russell Group universities, primarily Oxbridge, and I was in their 2nd cohort. In my year, lots of people went for the interview at Oxford, but then at each step of the application process, less and less people got accepted, and then it just became very quiet. So when I got accepted for each process, I just didn't really tell anybody because I didn't want to feel like I was showing off, and I didn't want people to feel bad, so I just kept it to myself, and only my best friend at the time knew. At the time though, I was applying to Oxford on my own because what was my family really going to do to help with that? In the month of October, the year that I was applying for unis, was very, very stressful for me, one of the worst times of my life, because I'd be really busy with 6th form, and then I'd come home to only have arguments with my mom every day because she didn't want me to move out, and she thought I just wanted to move out when I was trying to tell her no, just trying to go for these opportunities. We worked out in the end, and then she was basically saying if you go into Oxford, fine, but if you don't get in, then you're not moving out. And I was like, yeah, fair, makes sense, cool. And that was happening. But then when I was at sixth form, I wasn't getting much support from my college in how to apply to Oxford. Obviously, it was a fairly new place and they didn't have much experience with getting people in. I think now they've had way more offers, which is great. But in my year group, it was only me who got an offer or who actually got into Oxford in the end. And it was kind of awkward because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. So again, I was going through that alone. This isn't a sob story, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I was going through it alone and I didn't really have people to turn to. For Chinese studies especially, there wasn't much they could do to prepare us. Most of their efforts were focused on stuff like PPE and science related subjects and stuff, but for Chinese they didn't know how to help me, so I actually arranged for a workshop at Eton College where we had like a mock exam for the Cambridge Pre-U to help us with Chinese. I had a mock interview at a private college, I think, and it was helpful, but it was all kind of clueless. Like I didn't really know. Nobody really knew what we were doing because Chinese was such a small course, so really the interview was just talking about Chinese current affairs and asking me why I want to go to Oxford and those kind of things. But as I said, I just applied to Oxford because I thought if I can get in, that's great. I might as well try. And then I went for the interviews. The interviews went well. Obviously, I got my offer. And then, bearing in mind, I didn't really tell anybody about this. One day I was sitting in assembly and then I got an achievement award for getting into Oxford. And I had to walk up in front of my whole college and accept the certificate for getting into Oxford or getting an offer. And it was just like, wow, are we really doing this? It was kind of like a relief though, because this was the way that everybody finally knew that I got the offer without me having to say it. So that was nice, even though some people were already talking about it, even though I didn't tell them. And then eventually I got in, and yeah, this was quite a short story, I hope. What details am I leaving out? At my sixth form though, I managed to convince our sixth form in the first place to offer Chinese as a subject because my secondary school was one of the first to offer Mandarin as a GCSE, and the head teacher of my secondary school helped to open my sixth form, so I spoke to her, I had meetings with her, and eventually they managed to get that through. But because it wasn't a subject that they originally planned to have, there wasn't much in place to actually support it as a subject. Like there were times where we didn't have a classroom booked for our lessons. Sometimes the teacher wasn't informed that they had a class, so they didn't come into the sixth form. Our teacher was actually working in my secondary school, not at our sixth form. The sixth form was like a part-time thing just for our classes. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I left out from this story. I remember when the deputy head teacher of my sixth form was writing my reference for university, I was reading it back. One line she wrote was like, Nabeela's English is exceptionally good despite the fact that it's her second language. And I was like, it's not my second language. Like, I'm a native English speaker. I was born in the UK. My family's from Bangladesh, but like, I'm from the UK. She's like, what, really? You've been speaking English even from the crib? And I was like, yeah. And at the time, I didn't think of that as much. But when I told my mom, she was livid and she was like, does she think you're Jesus to be speaking from the crib in the first place? And yeah, so there were some things like that. I don't think she liked me much, that lady. And I feel like she was slightly racist. There were some microaggressions that I just didn't pick up on at the time. And beyond that, funnily enough, my school was made for like gifted students. We had to do a test to get in, but I think we were all pretty... It just felt normal, you know? I don't think everybody was exceptionally intelligent or anything. But I'm just trying to say, bearing in mind that was the background of this place, even though that was the background, I don't think I was one of the front runners to get into Oxford. Because I remember there was this session where we were in the library, when we were in our form groups, and we were like filling in the basics of our UCAS applications, and like literally the first steps, and people were talking about what subjects they might do and stuff. And then my tutor was talking to somebody, trying to convince her to apply to Oxford, but he never did that to me. And he talked to a few people, but I wasn't one of them. So I wasn't like one of the people expected to get in or anything. But those people didn't even want to apply. And some of them who did apply, as I mentioned, they didn't get in, which is unfortunate. But I think it worked out for them because they went on to do other things that they really enjoyed. But it's just funny. Even though I was one of the really smart people, I wasn't seen as somebody who would apply to Oxford. But then I did, and I was the only person to get in. So that was interesting. I would say there wasn't much support, especially because I did Chinese, which is a weird subject. It was a very small subject. So fair enough, people didn't really know how to support. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. I think my efforts to get into Oxford were very, very independent, and I worked so hard. I did so much research. I have a notebook where I basically wrote... Oh, where is it? It's not on my shelf right now, but like I had a notebook where I just wrote loads of things related to China. I did a lot of research about like the Chinese economy, Chinese religions, philosophy, literature, different things, and I tried to make notes on it and then make them more concise because obviously I was revising for my A-levels, but at the same time I didn't know what to expect in terms of interviews, and I just wanted to be prepared. So I remember after school sometimes I went to speak to the economics teacher, and he gave me like a breakdown of like the free market and all those kind of things. And I just tried to relate it back to China. So maybe that would help you as well. But honestly, a lot of those things didn't come up in the interviews. It was just useful to know, I guess. I was just preparing for the unknown. I didn't know what to expect. So yeah, that is my Oxford story, or how I got into Oxford. I'm not sure if I told it very well. I'm not sure if I missed out details. I don't think I did. But I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to hear more stories, let me know. Leave comments, ask me questions. There's a lot of stuff that happened in my year abroad, if you want to hear about them. Even though that happened a while ago, I could tell you more. And that's it. Check out the other video if you want to hear more answers to questions. And subscribe, share this with someone who might benefit, and have a great day.